Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Madam High Representative, Secretary General, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. For over 2 decades, United Europe has enjoyed an unprecedented period of political stability and economic prosperity. It has been sheltered under the umbrella of NATO and benefited from the political economic integration in the European Union. Meanwhile, the backsliding of defense budget has become a norm. Our military forces have grown complacent, being trained and equipped mostly for crisis management operation in remote areas of the globe. The Balkan missions and more recently the ISAF mission in Afghanistan can serve as extreme examples of this approach. However, recent months and years have shown all too clearly that premises on which our vision of the world rested have been highly delusive. With the Russian aggression on Ukraine and the ruthless terror spread by the so-called Islamic State, the change came about in full swing. Although the nature of these 2 major threats is different, they seem to share one goal: to undermine the foundations of a Western civilization and institutions based on democracy and human rights in order to impose their own skewed vision of the world order. The problems do not stop here. For some time now, waves of immigrants have been storming the beaches of the European Union from the Levant, North Africa, and even more unstable East. Moreover, the European neighborhood, more often than before, falls victim of instability instigated by the intentional use of various instruments we have learned to call a hybrid war. I'm sure that we all realize that the picture of today's security landscape in Europe is particularly gloomy. Unfortunately, open and optimistic Europe of the turn of the century has given way to this pirated construct, uncertain and fearful of its identity and future. Therefore, the time is ripe for Europe to think more seriously about security and defense. The decisions taken by the heads of states and government at the NATO summit in Newport and Warsaw show how political will can swiftly and effectively translate it into adequate actions. NATO durable reinforcement followed by forward presence on the eastern flank, combined with a comprehensive support package for our southern partners, send a clear signal of unity and determination to strengthen our defense. Only a week ago, during the meeting of foreign and defense ministers of the European Union member states, we agreed on a comprehensive medium-term program to strengthen common security and defense policy. The execution of this program has been entrusted to Her Excellency Federica Mogherini as a High Representative for CFSP and Head of European Defence Agency. I'm confident that the process is in good hands. First, we have to remember that enhancing the European Union-NATO relations in line with the Warsaw Declaration remains part and parcel of this process. We cannot afford CSDP and NATO go separate ways. We, as member states, must support our High Representative and NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg in order to ensure that a strengthened and more reliable CSDP is a true asset for NATO and for our American allies. Indeed, the new level of ambition that we have recently established comes with the conviction shared by all of us that in today's more demanding security environment, the European Union must strengthen its ability to act as a security provider, not only promoting peace, but also guaranteeing security of its citizens. Also, our recent discussions clearly prove that CSDP of today and possibly of tomorrow is not about the common defense, which remains the sole responsibility of NATO. In this major role, NATO must be supported and certainly not undermined by the CSDP. It is neither about creating a European army, which would supersede the national armed forces in their task to defend and manage crises. Although it may be necessary to create such an army in the future, it is not the moment yet. Now the time is high to work on what we have at hand and transform it into a single set of forces that are modern, fit to their purpose and available but both to NATO and the European Union, and of course to national contingencies should a need arise. Building on the implementation plan for European global strategy, the European Union sets for itself three strategic priorities. Namely, to be able to first respond to external conflicts and crises, second, build up capacities of its partners, and finally protect the European Union and its citizens. Obviously, in all these three areas, effective partnership with NATO is a prerequisite for success. I think that all of you will agree with me that over the years, military and civilian crisis management has become an European Union trademark, giving us comparative advantage over the other organizations. Civilian and non-executive military missions have especially become the European Union's most required input to international efforts aimed at stabilization and post-conflict recovery. Of course, it's an area in which there is still much room for improvement, starting from quality expert selection, through faster force generation, slimmer and more integrated mission support, and finishing with smoother transition to other forms of sustainable long-term support. Indeed, so much has been said and so little has been done to ensure that the whole range of the European Union instruments supporting stabilization and post-conflict recovery are used in a truly concerned manner. I deeply count on the leadership and skills of Federica Mogherini in her double capacity as a High Representative and Vice President of the Commission to ensure that CSDP missions and development aid work hand in glove in crisis region. The unique ability to deliver along a security development nexus is the key advantage of the European Union, one that can truly make a difference on condition that we finally manage to do it in the right way and reach our full potential in this respect. In this domain, NATO has obviously no suitable instruments and will never be the first responder. Nonetheless, the alliance can support the European Union with its more robust capabilities, as it has been the case in Kosovo and quite recently in Mediterranean. We all realize that operational cooperation is the most effective with a common understanding of the problem. Both organizations have the unique sources of information and knowledge of crisis regions. Therefore, they should strive for a common situational awareness that would lead to more accurate, faster decision-making processes, as well as to more effective operations in the theater. On the other end of the spectrum, the volume of robust EU military crisis management seems to be shrinking. I must admit that I do not believe the trend is going to be reversed. However, expectations are growing as regards capacity to rapidly deploy smaller yet robust units for shorter-term assignments. The European Union battle groups constitute a perfect tool for this purpose, yet they have remained idle due to a number of deficiencies that are inherent to the concept itself. It is therefore indispensable to have a sincere and open discussion about how the deployment is going to be financed in order to make it less burdensome for member states that provide them. In addition, we need to discuss how to make the more usable in scenarios that do not require their presence at large, or what would be the optimal shape of the roster. Close coordination with NATO is indispensable here, as battle groups are drawn from the same reservoir of national forces as NATO VJTF or NRF. On the other hand, the qualitative leap in the degree of interoperability and combat readiness the EU battle groups provide can be beneficial for NATO as it upgrades its posture on the eastern and southern flanks. Together with the current upgrade of the CSDP, the issue of appropriate planning and command capabilities for the European Union missions and operation is back on the table again. Undeniably, the European Union needs and deserves quality and efficient planning, as well as a command structure that would be tailored to its operational profile. Interestingly, contrary to initial assumptions and expectations, civilian and non-executive military crisis management play today a much more significant role in and for the European Union than its a military counterpart. The ratio civilian to military mission is 10:6, where 3 of the 6 military operations are in fact training missions. While military executive operations are reasonably well staffed and served well enough by operational headquarters offered by the member states, civilian and training missions are almost permanently understaffed beyond the schedule and lacking basic equipment and infrastructure. I believe that instead of focusing on spectacular yet useless, fully fledged military headquarters, at this stage we should rather undertake an internal reshuffle of the ES structures responsible for CSDP, so that they can provide a functional planning and management capability for civilian and non-executive military missions. These revamped structures should be capable of absorbing military expertise, if required, and processing lessons learned. These structures should also be in a position to interact with European Union delegations and Commission services in order to assure optimized European Union engagement in a given context. Moreover, long overdue projects such as Shared Service Center should be finally delivered. The name of the game is truly comprehensive approach. It may seem a minimalistic approach, but it should spare us lengthy and divisive discussions on rather lofty ideas and help focus on practical problems to be solved. For instance, how to ensure the United Kingdom remains positively disposed towards CSDP in the future. In this context, it's worth recalling that Berlin Plus arrangements are still in place for demanding military operations. As the implementation of the Warsaw Declaration on European Union-NATO cooperation foresees parallel back-to-back exercises based on a hybrid scenario, it would be useful to test them and to check whether the arrangements are still valid in today's security environment. European Union-NATO relations have always been closely related to capabilities being at the disposal of each organization. In essence, the whole Berlin Plus package was about using NATO capabilities. However, circumstances change. And today the discussion is more about how to ensure that capabilities, which are to be developed in the multinational configuration under CSDP umbrella, which are available for NATO. 1 week ago, here in Brussels, we identified priority areas as regards the development of capabilities and set ourselves ambitious goals in this regard. Intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance, remotely piloted aircraft systems, space assets, including secure satellite communications, strategic enablers. All these are areas in which deficiencies have also been identified on the NATO part of the House. It's therefore absolutely necessary that capability development process in the European Union is fully harmonized with NATO defense planning process so that member states, individually or collectively, develop capabilities which by their type and standards are also usable for NATO. Europeans must invest more and invest smartly to be able to deliver across the full spectrum of capabilities, including high-end combat capabilities. This is indeed a conclusion of a sober analysis of a security situation in and around Europe. This is also what our American allies have expected from us. With the new president, this particular expectation from Washington may become even more explicit than before. We need to remember that we will be able to deliver only if, right from the beginning, force goals and capability goals are agreed jointly in the European Union and NATO, and if European projects are open to non-European Union members of NATO wishing to join the table. We also need to remember that capability development process has an inherent industrial component. One of the major goals in this respect is to consolidate and strengthen the European defense technological and industrial base. This goal is justified both politically and economically. However, the process must be designed in such a way that the base remains broad and no monopolistic giants are created. For countries such as Poland, with best small and medium enterprises in this branch, joining the European mainstream is a challenge. Therefore, we would like this process to strengthen and not to strangle our enterprises. Today, effective crisis management and defense of our territories start away from our borders through building capacities and resilience of our partners. Both organizations have explicitly recognized this requirement and have launched concrete projects towards this goal. In this respect, NATO and European Union portfolios are almost perfectly complementary. It seems to be an excellent starting point for joint endeavors in partner countries, where NATO can help restructure military establishments and introduce integrity into military procurement. The European Union can do parallel or follow-on work on security sector reform in general, notably in this area of justice, policing, civic rights, and administration. With its new capacity building in support of security and development, the European Union can bring invaluable support in terms of equipment, thus decisively contributing to sustainability of our efforts. Moreover, I would like to underline that both organizations have much to offer to strengthen the partners' resilience against hybrid threats, just like in cyberspace, strategic communication, and critical infrastructure, to name but a few obvious areas. I hope that the report on the implementation of the Warsaw Declaration, to be tabled soon by High Representative and Secretary General, will include detailed proposals in this respect. Ladies and gentlemen, a week ago, Foreign and Defense Ministers of the European Union member states concluded that the European Union must have capacity to act autonomously when and where necessary, and with partners wherever possible. I believe that the upgrade of CSDP that we have launched must also serve the purpose of CSDP becoming a reliable and valuable partner for NATO. Soon we'll have a new President of the United States. In this context, I think that we should not ask what America can do for us any longer, but rather ask ourselves what we can do to help America remain our partner in security and defense for the turbulent times ahead. I thank you very much for the attention.